Okay. Okay, Diana, if you want to go ahead and get started, we are ready for you.
Well, thank you, Allison, and thank you so much for everyone who's joining us and who has an interest in the Heard Museum and the wonderful programs that we have coming up. Uh, the exhibit Maria and Modernism is one that opened at the Heard in February. Maria Martinez was born in San Ildefonso Pueblo in 1887. And along with her husband, Julian, she and Julian developed a style of pottery that really revolutionized pottery in the Southwest. And we'll be seeing some examples, or many examples, of that. The photo that you see of Maria here is in her studio later in her life. She lived and worked until 1980. And you can see a number of unfinished, or works in progress, really. Um, they are ready to be slip covered, polished with a smooth stone, uh, and fired, perhaps painted by a family member. Maria did all of the shaping of the pottery, and she worked with different family members for decorations when they were painted. Um, and thank you, Allison, for helping me with the slide progression. I think we can move to the next image. So the Heard exhibit is an effort to let our visitors and through the exhibition and through those who read the publication understand how Maria Martinez's pottery fits into the larger discussion of American modernism. I should mention that Maria Martinez is probably one of the best known artists working in this in perhaps one of the best known artists among collectors of Native American art. So well known that she was often referred to by her first name, just simply Maria, and one that we respectfully used when just talking about the title for the exhibition. But to give you an idea of how her work fit, first we thought perhaps it would be good to show you some different concepts of modernism as it pertained to architecture, to graphic design, and to interior design. And we'll see some other examples as well as we progress with the images. So the image on the left-hand side of your screen was taken at the Chicago World's Fair in 1933-34. You can see how architecture was dramatically changing at this time, as was graphic design. There are two actually, there's one brochure image in the center of the page about the fair, and then on the right-hand lower corner of the page, that's actually a deck of cards that was a souvenir deck from the fair. So we think of modernism as including Art Deco architecture and Art Deco designs, but also modernism was very streamlined, as we'll see with some other examples. The image on the upper right-hand screen, part of the screen, is it's actually a stage setting from the 1930s. So, just in a general way, as you start to think about modernism, what it means, what it looked like in these different forms, these images can start to help you with that concept. And if we move to the next slide, And I think you can see how perfectly Maria Martinez's pottery would have fit into this concept of streamlined shapes, this highly polished surface, the blackware ceramics that she developed. And in this case, some of these were by Maria herself, and some were with her son Popobide, um, who worked with her after the passing of her husband Julian in 1943. Popobide helped with the firing and of the pottery as well. We'll talk about that a little bit later. So these works were made from 1963 to 1970, roughly. Um, Maria was quite adept at shaping pottery. You can see how perfectly these are shaped, and that's one of the signatures of her work. If we could move to the next slide. In the course of the exhibit, we wanted to give our visitors some clear visual understandings of how Maria's pottery fit modernism. And so we pulled different images that represented modernism in other forms. That could be furniture, uh, trains, appliances, and in this case, it's a 1938 Buick. The jar that you see on the right-hand side is one of the early works that Maria made. She and her husband began making the blackware pottery and also the decorated matte black on polished blackware pottery right around 1919, 1920. Um, This was quite different for the time, and also the pottery shapes are quite different. And any of you who've had a chance or have tried your hand at ceramics know how difficult it is to accomplish some of the shapes, like the one in the jar featured here, to have that dramatic flare and then coming in toward the rim. You have to know the properties of the clay really well for this piece to support itself. It can't be too moist or the piece would collapse on itself. It can't be too dry or you would get cracks along the different areas. Her pottery was hand built, not wheel thrown. So she started with a base that was shaped in a puki or a form, and then adding coils of clay built up the walls of the clay, and then scrape those to make them smooth. And as I mentioned, she would also cover the entire ceramic with slip, which is liquid clay, and then polish with the smooth stone. This jar is one from the Heard Museum collection, one that has been in the collection for a very long time, and one that we thought was a true signature piece to begin the exhibit because it is totally by Maria's hand. It's not decorated, and yet it speaks so well to the concept of modernism and how her pottery fit into that larger discussion. The next slide, please. And there are two other examples of her polished ceramics. Not only is the polish appealing, and not only does the polish and the sheen and the color of the clay give an idea of this modernist concept, but also these shapes, which are very sinuous and just very perfect in terms of their shaping. So we have two of her ceramics here. The one on the left-hand side, made around 1950. Only the upper portion is highly polished, and the one on the right-hand side, made around 1964. Now, in the center is a commemorative coin from the 1933-34 Chicago World's Fair. And then the next slide, please. Again, these references to the World's Fair, they just offer some wonderful examples of everything that was going on in modernism, architecture, different design, graphic design, the some of the appliances and the things that were included. So this is the Chrysler Building, a postcard of the Chrysler Building from the 1933-34 Chicago World's Fair. And on the right-hand side, you can see a jar by Maria Martinez, decorated or painted by her husband Julian, and attributed to a date of about 1935. And it's interesting to look at the designs on the jar and consider the architectural elements of the building. Now, Maria and Julian exhibited, showed how to make pottery at this World's Fair in 33-34. Actually, they attended at least 4 World's Fairs in their lifetime. So in the process of their travels and attending these different World's Fairs, 1904 in St. Louis, 1915 in San Diego, 1933-34 in Chicago, and 1939 in San Francisco, they had the opportunity to see everything that was new and modern at the fairs, and they also had an opportunity to see other aspects of the cities that they were visiting. They were widely traveled, but yet Maria was very much a traditional Tewa woman. Next image, please. In the exhibit, we also wanted to give our visitors an idea of Maria's pottery in concert with some of the paintings that were being done at this time, some of the modernist paintings. The painting you see here is by Raymond Johnson. He was a transcendentalist artist working in New Mexico around this same time period. The painting, this example is from 1935, and you see this perfectly, again, shaped jar made by hand, all from coils of clay, by Maria Martinez. And you can see these parallels in design concepts from the painting of Raymond Johnson and the pottery of Maria Martinez. And next slide, please. Similarly, a work by Georgia O'Keeffe that we have in the exhibition, it's an untitled landscape. And Georgia O'Keeffe was referred to as the mother of modernism. But again, this compatibility of Maria Martinez's pottery with modernist paintings from the time period. We have several others in the exhibit. We have paintings by Agnes Pelton and also by a modernist Native American artist. We have a work, 2 works actually, by George Morrison and a work by Oscar Howe, 2 painters who were working in a very modernist style. And so along with the photos that we have of the concept car you saw, the Buick, of the train, that we actually have these examples of paintings that are interspersed through the exhibit, just visually, so that our visitors can see and understand how the pottery fits modernism in a way that doesn't really, it's more of a visual language than a written language, even though we have a lot of support labels because we tend to write a lot as well. Thank you. I was ready. So Maria Martinez's pottery was widely collected by collectors of modern art. And in this example, there's a photograph of Lawrence Rockefeller's office in the Rockefeller building. You can see an example of Maria Martinez's pottery on his desk there next to sculpture that we can see a little bit of. But you get this idea of how collectors of modern art were also collecting Maria Martinez's pottery. The pottery example that we have here is one in the Museum of Modern Art, which speaks to the interest in Maria Martinez's pottery, the fact that it is included in in MoMA in New York. The design on the example from MoMA is a water serpent, an ancient design that Julian painted onto ceramics. Actually, this one is painted by Maria Martinez's son, Popovide, around 1960. Now, Maria was one of the first ceramic artists to sign her work, and probably the first to consistently sign her work. She began by signing with the name Marie, and then later adding her husband's name, Marie and Julian. Her signature and signing changed through time. When she started working with her son Popovide, they also began to put a date with the pieces. Prior to that, if works were collected at a particular period of time, it was possible to know an exact date that they were made. Otherwise, often museums look at works that were collected where the date was known and then try to attribute pottery based on that those known works. And the next one, please. So it's important to consider how Maria made pottery, what the process was. And this photo shows quite a bit. There's a large container of clay. So the clay came from the village, near the village of San Ildefonso. It was collected in a harder form. Then it had to be screened, usually with like a household screen, to remove twigs, to remove stones, and to so that it would be smooth when mixed with water. So she's beginning to shape a bowl or a jar, not knowing how what she would continue to do with this. Again, starting with a form pressed into a base, and then building up coils of clay and smoothing them with her hands. This photo, we really like this photo for a couple of reasons. One is it's a time period when the shutter speed was really slow, and you can almost get the sense of her hand moving as she's working the clay. And then we also like the dog in the picture. It looks like he's, actually shaking or standing up or something. But the process is very laborious. There's the process of collecting the clay, getting it into this form so that it would be smooth and wouldn't have any impurities in it, shaping everything by hand using the coiling method, smoothing the walls, polishing the clay, and then later firing it out of doors. And if we move to the next slide. So this is an interior view, again, taken around the same time period as the first image that we showed you. You can see works in progress and Maria working on a particular um, particular vessel. And she's there at her home in San Ildefonso, and many people would visit her at her home to purchase works as early on, as early as the 1920s. So in this sense, Maria was very much, uh, obviously very much a traditional Pueblo woman, but very modern in terms of um, we'll call it a business plan, her business plan, because she didn't go through a middleman. People came to her to buy, or she sold at events like the World's Fairs. Um, and this was a different model at this time. uh, Most people someone would come and buy pottery and then resell it. But actually, because she became so well known um, at such an early point, people traveled to her to purchase ceramics. And the next image, this gives you an idea of just adding the slip or the liquid clay to the vessel. Um, and it's a photograph taken by Susan Peterson, one of the three biographers of Maria Martinez's life and work. And the next image. So the firing is something that takes place outside. And this photo, little known photo, actually brought to our attention by uh, one of our supporters. You can see that these ceramics have been moved from the firing, and if you look to on the right hand side, you can see that there's still smoke coming from that firing. Um, this is a firing pottery is always a risky process. We have a film in the exhibit, a film that was made in 1932 that shows Maria all the stages, shaping pottery, polishing it, painting it, and firing it. And in the film, they are including 46 vessels at one time. And when I say it's a risky process, the risk is having those works near each other in the firing. If there's an air bubble that's left in the clay in the firing process, then one piece might uh, explode, and in that process might hit other pieces and causing them to break as well. So when we think about these different steps in traditional pottery making like this, again, it is very laborious, all the different steps in getting the pottery made. It looks like in this picture, I don't know how the clarity, you can see that these are works that are painted with a matte paint on a polished surface. So the way that the black pottery is accomplished is by smothering the fire. And this was something that had, blackware pottery was something that had been made for centuries. The innovation that Maria and Julian brought to the process was the matte paint on the polished surface. And we'll see an early example in just a minute. So this is what pottery looked like before Maria and Julian um, developed the black on black style. This is, and also you can see that the shape of the jar is very different. So this photograph was taken sometime between 1912, 1915. It was taken at a time period before Maria Martinez and Julian had developed the blackware ceramics, and before they were known by name. A lot of potters, ceramic artists didn't sign their work at this time period. Works were made for sale, like this one, but they were in the natural clay colors. If you look at the bottom of the jar, you can see that it's sort of buff colored, and then it's covered in a cream colored slip and painted with the reddish design and the black design. Also, it's very interesting because the inside rim of the jar is painted. We were pleased to find this photograph of Maria, who's actually on the left-hand side of the photo at the Denver Public Library by searching online for photographs. One of our efforts was to because she has been so featured in so many books and journal articles, we were looking for photographs that had not been published as much. There's some beautiful photographs in the archives at the Museum of New Mexico and the University of New Mexico, but we were trying to find others. And in doing this, we had to search on different keywords like Potters of New Mexico, just to see what we could find, or sometimes World's Fairs, just to see what we could turn up. But we were excited to find this image because the jar that the yet to be identified woman, and we're hoping we can identify her, is holding. The jar she's holding has a star pattern that's not the same, but very similar to the jar that we have in the exhibit. So this is an example of polychrome pottery based sort of on a traditional water jar, very different from the shapes of the pottery that we were looking at in the course of showing these slides to you. Years ago, we found a similar photo of Maria on the portal of her home, taken around the same time period in a Fred Harvey Company brochure. And the Harvey Company was keen to promote artists if they knew their names, if they had any, if the public had any awareness of their names. So that was another indication that that Maria and would gain a great bit of recognition after the Blackware pottery was made, because the Harvey Company didn't mention her by name, but yet when they published works by the Hopi ceramic artist Nampeyo, they did promote her by name, and they did promote others. But just to, if you reflect on how different her pottery became as they begin to make the Blackware ceramics, the different shapes, the polishing, how very different it was, then this is representative of beautifully done. I mean, it's a beautiful polychrome, but representative of the ceramics that were being made at the time by Maria and by the other ceramic artists working. If we could go to the next slide. So this is one of the earliest examples of the black on black pottery when Maria and Julian began to first do this experimentation. And this is reversed because most of the surface is the matte paint and the polish is actually a small, is where the design is. And then they reversed that later, and the polished surface became prominent and the painted design smaller. I'm sure this took a good bit of time to cover this jar so thoroughly in the matte paint. And you can see this is actually, it's kind of the reverse side of a water serpent. But in the center, just below the rim of the jar, there's designs that represent a cloud pattern. And some of these designs are just wonderful, though they're they may have a representation, their abstractness also perfectly fits with the modernist concept. And the next image, please. So we talked about the fact that Maria Martinez became well known at a pretty quickly. We just saw the ceramic made around 1919, 1920. This photograph was taken in 1926 when the Rockefeller family was on vacation in New Mexico. They specifically sought out Maria Martinez and met her. And it's interesting to see the jar that she's holding and the shape of it, and to think about the polychrome jar that we just saw and how this shape is very different in this black on black piece that she was making at that time in 1926. And the next image. This is a wonderful photograph of Maria Martinez taken around 1974 or 76 by Jerry Jacka. We do have this jar, the actual jar, in the exhibition, and we do have this photo of Maria. So the jar was made around 1942. It's in the collection of the Museum of Indian Arts and Culture in Santa Fe. But it speaks to Maria's ability to form these really large shapes. And it also speaks to a change in aesthetics where there is this move toward a perfection of shape. In some of the earlier ceramics made right around the turn of the century, you just don't see that same aesthetic. But this one, its size and its scale is really remarkable. Also, the painted designs, which were painted by Julian, can't see as well here. We certainly hope you visit the exhibit. But the painted designs just work perfectly with the shape of the jar. And then keep in mind that this is polished, fully polished. And once I've been told, and maybe Jason can speak to this, once you start polishing a ceramic, it's not like you stop and go do something else and come back. You keep polishing and polish the entire vessel. Some of these undertakings were family endeavors. Family members helped. It was not always an individual undertaking. And also keep in mind that this jar was fired in an outside fire. Just the risk of firing outside or firing anything this big, but it's quite an accomplishment in terms of its size and scale, in terms of the fact that it's all handmade and also fired outdoors. And the next images, please. Hopefully you can get an idea here of gunmetal fired jars. These are two examples where the sheen is such that it has been noted that it looks like gunmetal, that it's this incredible gray color, and the shine is amazing. So these are two different pieces. The one on the left-hand side made by Maria Martinez in 1963, and the one on the right-hand side made with her son Popovi Day. The gunmetal firing can be or could be accomplished with a really high heat or a very hot firing. Also, we've been told by Charles King, one of the authors of a book about Tony Day, Popovi Day's son and Maria's grandson, that additionally it could be accomplished in addition to smothering the fire to get the blackware, usually smothering with cow dung or horse dung. Also adding ash to the fire was something that Popovi Day did to prompt this gunmetal finish. We do hope that you have a chance to come to the museum just to see these works because they're truly amazing. And the next image. So I mentioned Maria's travels and participation in World's Fairs. The first one was 1904, the Louisiana Purchase Exposition. She was a young bride, about 17 years old. She and Julian were at that fair. And that was the fair, and if you think about these world fairs, all sorts of things are introduced at the World's Fairs. And the only thing I can remember about San Diego is the ice cream cone. But inventions were introduced, architecture was different, and we particularly like this photograph of Maria because what we had seen prior to these were photos of her working and shaping pottery, which are, of course, very interesting. But here she's just, enjoying or else agreeing to be photographed in at the fair, but more of a portrait than a working photo. We also particularly liked the photo on the right-hand side when Maria and Julian were in San Francisco because it's not a stage photo. So it's nice to have these contrast of portrait, stage portrait photos and then casual photos. And I think you can see from the San Francisco photo these different works in progress that Maria was making. And the next image. So in addition to traveling to the World's Fairs, we mentioned St. Louis, San Diego, Chicago, San Francisco. Maria and Julian traveled to New York in 1931 for a big exhibit called the Exposition of Indian Tribal Arts. This photo on the left-hand side was a photo taken of the city skyline in the 1930s, and the photo that includes the photo of Maria is in their hotel room, and they're playing cards. So again, to have these photographs that show the wonderful portrait photos, but also the casual photos were of interest to us, and both of these images are included in the exhibit. There were some newspaper articles, interviews at the time in 1931. Maria was there, also another important ceramic artist from San Ildefonso, Tonita Roybal, was there. And the newspaper articles, of course, they pick and choose what they include in the interview, but Maria and Tonita were quoted as saying that they were interested in going shopping, and this was their first opportunity to see the Atlantic Ocean, and they were excited about that, according to the newspaper articles. But these many travels gave the artist a chance to see the changes in architecture. I mean, the Empire State Building was newly constructed, not much before their visit in 31, and modernism in its many forms. And it's interesting to reflect on that and just think how the shapes of her pottery changed so dramatically in the time that she worked, and how the designs that Julian painted on the pottery so perfectly fit modernism as well. And I have one more image to show. We do have a contemporary section in the exhibit, and Jason Garcia's, one of his ceramic tiles was just added to that. These two photos are not in the same area of the exhibit, but they're fun photos that are included. On the left-hand side is Maria and Julian's first car that they acquired in 1924. I think they were the first in their village to own a car, and you can see that Julian painted designs on the side of the car. And then we've also included a car, it's an El Camino that Rose Simpson painted, uh, uh, and she thought of it as a vessel. They used the car. There's a wonderful essay written by Rose in the publication that we did that accompanies the exhibit, and she named the car Maria. That she and her family were using the El Camino to harvest crops, and that it occurred to her it was like a vessel. And so, and also she had the car is in working order thanks to Rose Simpson's abilities to learn how to do that that part of it. So I'll just end the discussion with these two images and encourage you to, we hope that you all have a chance to visit the exhibit. There are many more examples in the exhibit of everything, of modernist designs, of Maria's pottery, of the early polychrome pottery, and of course we have a large, I mean, a good sized photo of the car that they decorated, and a wonderful large scale photo of Rose Simpson's car. So I thank you for your attention and hope that you can visit the exhibit.
Wonderful. Thank you, Diana. I really appreciate you sharing all that with us. And oh, my apologies. There we go. Before we introduce our next guest, Jason Garcia, I just wanted to say thank you for all of you that are attending, and saw in the chat that we have Maria and Julian's granddaughter, Sheila, is in attendance. So exciting to see people that are related to Maria, and excited that people who've never heard of Maria get to also be in attendance tonight too. So I'm going to go ahead and turn over the evening to Jason Garcia. Just as a quick introduction, Jason is a ceramic artist, and as mentioned before, one of his artworks has been recently acquired by the Heard Museum that we based one of our classroom materials, the art card, on. So very exciting and many of his works are also in the Heard Museum on display, as well as other classroom materials have been have been fashioned after his works as well. So Jason, so grateful for you to be on, and looking forward to hearing your piece.
Are we good? Can you hear me?
We can hear you just fine. Thank you.
Okay, good. And you can see me as well too.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you to everyone. Good evening. My name is Jason Garcia. Also, Okupin is my Tewa name. Okupin translates to Turtle Mountain. And I have a little bio here, so I'll go ahead and read it. It's kind of in the third, I'll just read it in the third person. So, Jason Garcia, Okupin, Turtle Mountain. Work documents the ever-changing cultural landscape of his home in Ha'owinge, Santa Clara Pueblo, New Mexico. Garcia's Tewa cultural ceremonies, traditions, and stories, as well as 21st century popular culture, comic books, and technology, influences his clay and print work. Using traditional materials and traditional Pueblo pottery techniques, coupled with various printmaking techniques, this juxtaposition of customary and contemporary materials and techniques connect him to his ancestral past, landscape, and cultural knowledge. His work has been exhibited in many museums and various exhibitions in the Southwest and the Midwest United States. These include the National Museum of the American Indian, Arizona State University, the Nelson Atkins Museum of Art, the Colby Museum of Art, the Peabody Essex Museum, and also the Heard Museum, as mentioned earlier. Garcia earned his Bachelor of Fine Arts from the University of New Mexico, Albuquerque, New Mexico, and his Master of Fine Arts in Printmaking at the University of Wisconsin-Madison in Wisconsin. And Garcia resides and works in his studio located in Santa Clara Pueblo, New Mexico. So that's just basically my pretty much brief bio as who I am as an artist and what influences me. And I think from my understanding, just talking about the exhibition, Maria and Modernism, I was fortunate enough, and I've been also participating with the Heard Museum probably at least 20 plus years, working with them in various exhibitions, having my work in the home permanent exhibition, and then also having work in the Maria Modernism piece. I'm not too sure if we have an image of that. I didn't see if we got one that's displayed in the exhibition. I was fortunate enough to view the exhibition back in early March when the Heard Show was happening on Sunday of the museum of the show. I was able to see the exhibition, and it was amazing to see the amount of work that's in the museum, that's in the exhibition, the different styles of pottery, and then just the amount of work that was present. I haven't seen anything that significant since probably what work might be in the collection at the Indian Arts Research Center at the School for Advanced Research located in Santa Fe, New Mexico. But it was an amazing exhibition. The curators and the artists that are participating in the exhibition did an amazing job, and I was really feel fortunate and privileged to be part of that exhibition. The Heard Museum acquired one of my pieces. The piece is Tewa Tells the Suspense. I believe the number is like 121, I believe. But the title of it is also Bonjogiri, which is Summer 1945. And then also another part of the title is Barbenheimer. And so the Tewa Tells the Suspense is a series of work that I've been working on since probably like 2007. And this particular series documents various Tewa historical events like the Pueblo Revolt, various migration stories, various creation stories, heroic stories, and then also lately I've been introducing more modern day stories, which include the Manhattan Project, Project Y at Los Alamos, New Mexico. And that was part of the creation of the atomic bomb used to end World War II. And so the date, Bonjogiri Summer 1945, relates to the detonation time period of the atomic bomb here in New Mexico, test droppings, and then also the bombing in Japan that ended World War II. San Ildefonso and Pujoge Winge is the traditional Tewa name for San Ildefonso, which is where water cuts through. And that's pretty much related to the way that the geographical area in the area of San Ildefonso, Pujoge. And then Santa Clara Pueblo Winge is traditional name for Santa Clara Pueblo is Rose Path. So when our ancestors had moved here off the Pajarito Plateau, there were wild roses growing along the Santa Clara Creek and the Rio Grande. And San Ildefonso and Santa Clara is also part of 6 Tewa Pueblos that are located in northern New Mexico. The others are Oquewingue, San Juan Pueblo, Santa Clara again, San Ildefonso, Nambe, Pewaukee, and Tsuki Pueblos. And then there's also a village located at First Mesa that was part of migration that took place not too long after the Pueblo Revolt of 1680, and then also the additional revolts that happened in 1694, 1696, along with the return of de Vargas to New Mexico in 1692. So there's a lot of my work focuses on those various events that were pivotal in our Tewa history, current and past as well too. So this is the piece that was acquired by the exhibition, and I'm not too sure exactly where it's placed in the museum in the particular exhibition, but I know there's a part of the exhibition that has a title that's Intersections of Modernism and the Atomic Age, and so I know it has a couple pictures showing the influence on the Manhattan Project to the local pueblos, specifically San Ildefonso, where Maria was from. And I know that there's a photo of one of the scientists, that Robert Brody, that and then also Enrico Fermi, that was also one of the scientists of the Manhattan Project there. And so, in terms of the Manhattan Project on our areas, and this particular piece, again shows the Tewa tells the suspense, and reflecting the recent movie by Greta Gerwig, Barbie. So this is, it's a mashup of the Oppenheimer movie that recently came out and the Barbie movie. So hence the title Barbenheimer. And it has the and the Tewa tells the suspenses are ceramic clay tiles. I've also done pots. I've also done various prints using different mediums such as serigraphy, silkscreen printing, lithography, and intaglio etching, and risographs. And so the number is 119. So I've had about 119 various iterations of different stories or different images related to the subject. And it's the picture of a corn maiden driving in her Corvette, similar to the movie poster Barbie, and then it has the corn maiden with the tablita with the atomic symbols on her on her dance tablet, which also is represents rain, and then shapes that you see on Maria's pottery, and then the Pajarito Plateau has a lot of various Tewa ancestral villages located throughout that area. And there's various stories of one of my uncles when he was working up in the labs, probably late 1940s, early 1950s. And, he was saying that, he would see where various waste was just dumped into the arroyos or dumped into canyons, and some of these canyons and places held ancestral villages or ancestral field houses related to our Tewa ancestors. So that's kind of what that reference is with the kiva, and then the adobe buildings is referencing our ancestral Tewa villages there. And then I typically always put a rain cloud in my work, and in the sky or in some manner, and that relates to the particular rain cloud that's in it. References the shoulder patch that the army soldiers wore, and it relates to the Manhattan Project as well. The original image has like the lightning bolt that's coming down, and then it has like a question mark actually over in like a blue star, I believe, and on a red star, I believe, and on a field of blue. And then the atomic bomb is going off, and that's just also relating to the nuclear colonization of New Mexico, and then also the our ancestral Tewa areas as well, and various environmental concerns that we have as well. So the piece really fits, has a nice fit into that particular area of the exhibition. And the clay tile is made from traditional hand processed clay gathered here in the foothills located near Santa Clara Pueblo. And the processes of creating or harvesting the clay is, similar to the way that Maria and her family and other Tewa families that are potters create or gather the clay and then process the clay with volcanic ash temper, and then it's painted with the polychrome. It's a polychrome, which is using various mineral pigments, various vegetal pigments created from different clays gathered in various areas in New Mexico, northern Arizona, southern Colorado, that I've found and experimented with. And this is very similar to the early polychrome work that Maria and her family and Julian were doing. And then it's traditionally fired outdoors as well too. And it's the black pottery is the oxidation reduction process. So it's smothered, the fire smothered with horse manure, and that's what the carbon is infused into the piece. But if you don't do the smothering of fire, then your colors will come out what the natural color is. But there are some colors that that in nature they change, and that also depends on the chemical makeup of the paint, and then also the chemical change that the firing creates as well too. I know we were talking about also some like influences of Maria, and then also Julian, and then family wise I know several members of Maria's grandchildren, great grandchildren. I went to school with them, grew up with them, or also participated in various shows with them. And we went to high school together, so we know one another. We work together in various roles within the pueblos or different consultation meetings. I previously had also worked for Santa Clara Pueblo Office of Cultural Rights and Rights Protection as well too, reacquiring our ancestral Tewa lands, and also working with San Ildefonso on regaining some of those lands that were either U.S. Forest Service lands, or there were some private lands that we also worked on getting back for both of the pueblos. One family connection, is that Maria and my paternal great grandmother, Severa Gutierrez Tafoya, they were both awarded the Palms Academique for Excellence in the Arts by the French government in 1954. And I know there was an exhibition on the San Ildefonso painter, Awatide, Alfonso Roybal, and I know it had a picture of that particular event. I'm not too sure if it had the medal that they got, that they were awarded, but there's a picture, and it shows Awatide along with a couple other Pueblo artists, and Maria, and then also my paternal great grandmother are also pictured as well too. It's really interesting to see to talk about the modernism part, and as I was kind of just doing some minor research, looking at what modernism is defined as, and modernism is defined as a movement in the arts in the first half of the 20th century that rejected traditional values and techniques and emphasized the importance of individual experience. And then also it's part of rejection of religious belief. So it's kind of interesting to see how, I guess you would say, non-native artists that are modernist artists borrowed, appropriated styles of art that influence them, and how they rejected these traditional values and techniques, but then, they're influenced by Pueblo art, by Native American art that has significant traditional values and significant traditional techniques as well. And then also the importance of the individual experience is also kind of interesting to think about in terms of the community as well too, and thinking about again, just in some of my research that I've done, and then knowing and being part of a Pueblo family, that it has a lot to do with the community and sharing and coming together. And I know that Maria was very generous in terms of her work that she was getting, and also aware that she was outsourcing some of her work to the Pueblos, just to maybe like help her sand and things like that, if you're just one of those artist things. But and then also the rejection of religious belief is kind of interesting to think about. If you look at the pottery, there are a lot of religious iconography in the work of the rain clouds and the Avanu, the water serpent, and incantations for rain, representations of mountains and various birds and things like that. So it's really interesting to see, that definition of modernism in terms of the non-native artists, such as Raymond Johnson, who did appropriate a lot of various images from Pueblo painters, that he worked with, and in his time here in New Mexico. And then also interesting to see Georgia O'Keeffe mentioned as well too as the mother of modernism. So it's kind of interesting to think about that as well. And I'm currently working on a project with the Georgia O'Keeffe Museum as well too. So whenever I hear her name, I always kind of the light bulb comes on. And also as part of that project, I'm working with Shireen Gonzalez, who is a great granddaughter of Maria Martinez, the daughter of Kevin Gonzalez, and she had a film. I think it's Our Quillo in San Ildefonso Tewa, but she had a film there, and she's an amazing filmmaker as well too. And also my son, who was who I didn't realize, but my son Jacob Shihei also provided music for that film, but didn't realize it until I saw the ending credits. And then also as I was exiting the exhibition, Barbara Gonzalez, Maria's granddaughter, and then also her son Kevin, and they were coming into the exhibition to take a look at it, and so it was really nice to tell them about how amazing the exhibition was, and how inspiring it was as well too, to see not only their work but also to see their grandmothers, their grandfathers, and then other relatives, and then also other Pueblo artists as well too. So that was one of the things that I really appreciated as well too, showing various artists like Susan Falwa, I know was one, Rose Simpson, myself, Shireen, Kevin, and also Aaron Gonzalez as well. The words that he had in the film were pretty amazing to hear him talk about the significance and also just a love for his grandmother as well too. So I was really honored to hear that as well too. I think we're kind of at 20 minutes, and I know we're going to do some questions, answers, and I'm open to pretty much anything. But again, thank you very much for having me here this evening to talk and present and share the piece of that I have in this particular exhibition. And look forward to seeing and hearing various ideas that you have in regards to classroom teaching. And again, thank you very much, Kudawaha.
Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing context about the work and about the broader community, all of those connections. It is really neat to just hear how so many things are intertwined with the exhibition and the work being produced, and two just very talented families, I must say, represented by yours and the Martinez family and Gonzalez family, et cetera. And we are really happy now to open up for some opportunity for Q&A, questions for Jason Garcia or for Diana Pardue. You're welcome to put your questions into the chat box or into the Q&A box. If you would like to share a question, again, could be connected to more of the classroom side, more of the artistic vision side, the modernism side, anything that's on your mind based on those two incredible presentations. And thank you again. If you'd like, I'll give people a moment to put some things into the chat or into the Q&A box.
And I don't know if you have any questions, Diana, regarding the exhibition or, past exhibitions or anything like that, or?
Well, I was just going to mention, I'm on, right? I was just going to thank Sheila Martinez, who early on, and unfortunately I didn't see her comment because I was looking at my slides, but the family pronounces she's the her great grandfather's name Julian, not Julian, which is how I was pronouncing it, and I really appreciate that. I've been told both. I almost feel a little bit schizophrenic the way I move back and forth between the pronunciations. So Sheila, I thank you very much for bringing that. I wish I had seen, I didn't see the chat pop up, or I would have made that correction in the course of talking. Jason, we just love your work. It's fabulous, and we were so excited to acquire it. We actually bought it at the Herd Fair, and I actually tried to get there at 8 o'clock and be fair in terms of getting in line. And then we added it to the exhibit as quickly as we could because we thought it was just a great compliment. And I'm glad you mentioned the contemporary section and the artists who are included. I was just really, sort of focusing on some of the other aspects of the exhibit. So thank you so much for doing that. And Shireen Gonzalez, who contributed the film, and also she wrote an essay for the book, and we were very grateful to her for that.
We do have a question that's come up in the chat. Did Maria have a second son, and did he work on pottery, or was Maria's second child her daughter?
She had a few sons. I think you're referring to maybe Adam Martinez, who was her oldest son, and who after Julian passed away, and then later, sorry, Julian, after he passed away, and then later Adam and his wife Santana, who was sister to Alicide, who you mentioned, Jason, and actually they are Barbara Gonzalez's grandparents. So Adam was very active. His wife Santana, in later years, painted some of the pottery for Maria. And we do have some examples in the exhibit.
Thank you, and thank you for the questions. Anything else? Oh, let's see. Oh, great. Well, we have a comment from Jillian Schmidt who just started teaching art in Shiprock, New Mexico, after 23 years in a core classroom, which is quite a shift, but an exciting one for sure, on the Navajo Nation, and just attended tonight to learn from both of you. So just gratitude for what you both shared. And how exciting, Jolene, to be moving into the art teaching realm. That is what I used to do and love. So I'm excited for you. Hope you're enjoying that. Jason, thinking specifically about for the art teachers in the audience, is there anything that in your experience, you know, developing your own art craft, or as you think back, is there any oh yeah, actually, okay, this is kind of similar to a question that just came in, but I'm just curious if there's anything you think it's important for teachers to do or to share with their students as part of their creative development. And then we have kind of an even more specific question that I can get into in just a second. But if there's anything that you would, you know, encourage teachers to be mindful of or share about as they're teaching young artists, would love to hear from you about that.
Yeah, I think as an art teacher as well too, I think it's and as a former art student over all the past years that I've been a student, I think it's also just important to you know, encourage your students to create and work, and sometimes not being too critical. That's also another thing. Sometimes as an art teacher, you know, we can be like, oh, you're doing it wrong, or don't do it this way, or you know. And then also another thing is also teaching the importance of materials. I think that's one of those things of how maybe how sacred our materials can be. You know, sometimes like our brushes, our paint, our markers, you know, like, you know, remember to put the caps on those, all these things that I always doing. Like, you know, that's one important thing, is take care of your materials. And that's also relating back to the pottery and clay, you know, that is our materials are extremely precious, and they're sacred to us, and you know, they have a life that it's created from, and it also creates life for us, and that they're still a living and breathing entity that the pot is. And then also in terms of the environment as well too, you know, that we hold that precious and sacred. And you know, as I talked about the Manhattan Project, you know, there's a lot of environmental concerns that we're dealing with various environmental contamination from the Manhattan Project and present day Los Alamos and National Laboratory. And, you know, that's gotten into the water and the soil and the air, and, you know, that all affects us. And even some of our old ancestral clay pits are gone because of certain places or other pueblos, you know, they've been either removed or destroyed by various projects. Like the Cochiti Dam is one that's very significant, or just very there, you know, that it destroyed a lot of various clay pits and paint areas where various materials were gathered. So that's probably like the thing to say about the kids, is like, keep your materials sacred, keep track of your pens and your pencils, and you know, but also use your materials. You know, sometimes we hold things too precious, where they're like, oh, I can't write, or I can't draw on this paper or this notebook, and it's just like, just create, just enjoy what you're doing. I know the question was that of what would your message be to young artists that want to bring social justice or cultural awareness into their creations? I think there's a lot of various, you know, messages, whether it's, you know, in terms of my work of, you know, there is that social justice and cultural awareness that's related to history and culture, such as Pueblo Revolt and the history of, you know, repartimiento, which is the and the encomienda systems that the Spanish placed, which is indentured servitude and heavy taxation, and you know, the destruction of Pueblo religion as well too. And so, you know, those are some of the things that I talk about in my work. Some are very in your face, and some are also very subtle. Like the even the Barbenheimer piece, where you can see it and as humor, but then you also understand, a lot of the different messaging behind it, and some of it has various layers as well too. So I think, is there a balance? And do I see my art as a vehicle for my passions and messages? Yes, I think it is a way of getting a lot of messages out there. It's also the history teaching of a history teaching tool. A lot of the work that I do has a lot of research from oral histories and also writings, and uses various like archaeological information as well too. One of my colleagues, Dr. Woody Joseph Aguilar from San Ildefonso Pueblo, is the archaeologist, and we collaborate a lot and use go back and forth of our work, in conjunction with one another, and talking to one another, and using some of those the archaeology and also site visits is also important to the work. So I think that's also part of it, of getting out into nature and reading and researching. There is a lot to be understood, and even in terms of Maria's work, there's this it's like a little box that she created, and it has a black avenue that's painted on it, a water serpent, and they had like research various pottery sherds and rock art, and that was reflected in their work as well too. So I think that's part of it as well, of learning and researching as well, and visiting those places.
Oh, Jason, was there someone who particularly influenced you or encouraged you when you were starting, a family member or individual or somebody who?
I would probably say, like, there's like so many different various mentors that I've had over the years, and influences, but I think some of the major ones have been my parents, John and Gloria Garcia, um, traveling to various shows and various art markets throughout the years, and then also my grandparents as well. And both my maternal and paternal sides are both potters, so that influence, and also various styles. My parents' mother works more in a sgraffito style, and my paternal side does kind of more of the quote unquote traditional Santa Clara Pueblo pottery, which is the black pottery and traditional water bases. But then also on maternal side, was doing various polishing and polychrome styles. So I never felt like you had to do a certain niche or whatever. It was pretty much open. And then being, like I said, being a student as well too, I've had some amazing mentors, university mentors. Patrick Nagatani was one of my professors at UNM. Tom Jones at University of Wisconsin, Ho Chung photographer, and Linda Berry, a cartoonist there also at University of Wisconsin, was also influential and helpful in a lot of things. So I've had a lot of mentors, but and then also just talking with other people, and I think it was at I want to say Native, or I think it was in the early years that we were participating at the Herd Museum. Our booth neighbors was Barbara Gonzalez, Robert Gonzalez, and so they were right next to us at the booth, so always talking with them and visiting with them and things like that. So you kind of get influence, and you look at each other's work, or as Barbara's an older in the same generation as my parents, she has that motherly instinct to talk about your work, or influence you, or say you're doing great job, or keep it up and things. So those are always good role models and good people. So
thank you. And that connects some to a question that was just put in the chat, if you want to expand a little bit more. Beth Olson said, thank you so much for the reminder of the preciousness of art materials. Amazed at students here in Kayenta who are cavalier about materials and don't seem to want to care for them. Aside from a lot of the artists and people that you just mentioned, do you have any other resources or suggestions for inspiration that teachers could use in the classroom?
Yeah, that's good to I'm trying to think of what resources. I mean, I guess the first resource is you're the art teacher, but then also I think one of the things that I always like to do and still do is to invite members from the community, especially if you're in Kayenta. Maybe there's a parent or a grandparent that would be willing to come in and talk to your students about materials, or maybe they're a painter or an artist or a jeweler. I mean, as a jeweler, you don't just haphazardly throw silver or gold, or your stones are precious as well too. So those are always good things to understand, or and so I think that's part of that of the of having other artists come in and speak to the students and family members. I think that's a good resource as well for having people from the community come in and talk and share their work with the students as well, and also provide inspiration and possible mentorship over the years too, because again, having various mentors in the community of aunts, uncles, grandparents, and just observing them. And then also, if you have questions, they're always available for answers too, is part of that as well.
Can I sneak in a technical question? Jason, I was when I was waiting at your booth, and I think you were picking up things that Saturday morning.
Mm-hmm.
Someone mentioned how difficult it is to make a tile, and
Mm-hmm.
what are the challenges with those flat tiles? What do they break or crack, or what are the technical challenges with it?
Yeah, the technical challenges, and I was in preparation for the talk too. I had watched there was like the 1972 documentary. I think it was like maybe Department of Interior that had done one on Maria Popovi, and they were firing pottery, and they showed Maria mixing the clay, and the narrator was talking about the materials that the clay and the temper has to be a particular ratio, because otherwise when you're mixing the clay and you add those two materials, the temper is used to reduce cracking in the vessel or the tile, but then also that temper, the volcanic ash, also allows the piece to be fired without exploding or breaking. But then as you're mixing your clay, you have to have all your air bubbles, your impurities, all those things. So there's so many variables of elimination that you need to eliminate to get, the pot or the clay piece good and perfect. And I don't know, perfection's the best word to use. And also in the video, the film, they do show Maria and Popovi praying before they gather the clay, asking for permission. So that's, like the first step. And then that the clay will create a beautiful vessel, and so there's the steps of that, and then there's the actual making. And so with a tile, I'm using clay with a little bit heavier ratio of temper to it, because then the clay kind of warps. But then I also like that, where if it was 100% flat, that's not what I'm after. So sometimes as it dries, it might buckle a little bit. It also shrinks. Probably clay shrinks anywhere from I'd say 60 to 80%, again, just depending on your clay ratio, your clay body, everything, the humidity, the weather, how fast it dries. There's just so many there's those variables. Also the weather, the humidity outside, wind. You don't want the window open and the pot set out by the window, because then there's that too much wind that's drying the pot unevenly. And then I also like to make indentations on the pottery. the clay vessel, of having like indentation. So if you'll look at the tile, you'll see kind of a waviness, or maybe my fingerprints or my handprints on the actual tile that gives it texture, which is also one of the things as I worked and visited various ancestral villages on the Pajarito Plateau, finding potsherds, and they have like the hand markings, or as the potter smooth over the pot, seeing these 400+ year old vessels and they have a fingerprint in them is just like mind blowing to know that, my ancestor created this, and having that direct connection to that particular pot and vessel. So those are some of the things that I look for in my own work of trying to do that. And then the part of, then it's the sanding, sanding the paint and then painting it and holding the tile. And then the firing is always the final, the final say, if all your variables up to that point have been good, hopefully we get a successful firing. In the film, they talk about it has to be a calm morning, and just watching the way that Maria Popovi set up the firing, they very, very carefully and gingerly place the pottery. And there's some videos they show him putting up pots, and then he thinks about it, and then he readjusts it and takes it off and then moves it. So there's just all that carefulness and experience as well too, of knowing how things are going to fire. And then patience is also a large thing. And I remember there was in the book I was reading, and then also this is the one that I was also looking at, the Maria legacy. I think she had mentioned something about how you have to have lots of patience, and sometimes there's people I know that don't have patience to be potters, so they'll be like, oh, I'll be a jeweler or I'll be a painter. But that firing is the last step that's crucial to having a successful firing, and that's also dependent on weather. You don't want it windy, you don't want it raining, snowing, and going in with a good mind, a good heart. And so there's again so many variables that come about. Is it harder than a pot? I would say no, because then also the pot, you're making it round, it has to be symmetrical, it has to be certain sizes. Like even the picture that showed, like, can you imagine like building a pot that huge? Is amazing, just the time and effort. And then what happens if you lose it? That's another thing too. So so I'd say I think pottery is very it has its difficulties, I'll just say, but we all have our variables that we understand that we need to eliminate, and then our variables have to be correct also. So it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work.
Well, thank you so much. Go ahead.
They're kicking me out of the building.
Okay.
Sorry.
Time too,
Thank you, Diana. We have a couple other questions, which when we send a follow-up email, Diana, they're questions, I think specifically maybe you'd be best to answer them, just because it's a little bit more about some of Maria's work and how it relates to the exhibition. So we'll follow up on those two questions from Marcia and Gregory. We will come back to that. But Diana, thank you so much. Jason, thank you so much. We're getting close to time. So our team's going to share just a little bit about some of the resources that will be going out in an email to all the teachers as soon as we finish, and we'll do our quick raffle and call it an evening. But thank you so much. This has just been full of such great information and inspiration. So again, thank you. And Allison and Hal, I'm going to pass it back to you all, and then we'll do our raffle. And thank you again.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Herd Museum staff, everyone.
All right, I'll go ahead and share our PowerPoint again. And I'll briefly go through if it would work. Hold on, I'm gonna stop sharing for a second. Try that one more time. And then I'll share with you briefly about the classroom resources. There we go. Okay, so there's a few different classroom resources that we wanted to share with you that we have especially made for this evening. And these are two different coloring pages that you can use in your classroom to introduce Maria, or maybe if it's in between different topics, something that's a little bit easier, that's not as heavy. So this first one is the Maria Parrot plate. This one is a plate that was created by both Maria and Julian. Julian had painted on the slip, while Maria created the vessel, the plate. So there's this one that you will have as a download, as well as this page. This is Maria and Julian's Dodge. And as you can see in this picture on the left, they had customized their car in a Tewa design. And it acted almost as a billboard, a marketing tool for their art. And so this art, this coloring page is for your students to get creative, customize how they would have decorated the car if they were the artist that owned this Dodge, and kind of a fun way to kind of spur on that individuality as well as creativity in the classroom. And we also have this downloadable poster. This is a great poster to have, either throughout the year or during various, art initiatives. There is a overview of Maria, her life, her work, and her influence, as well as two of her pieces. You can see there's a bowl and a plate, and a map with where San Ildefonso is located in New Mexico, and one of her quotes that was in the book Shaped by Her Hands, written by her granddaughter, Barbara Gonzalez. So that is downloadable. It's something that you can either download just through, just through regular paper, or you can, take that to get, a larger size as well for your classroom. All right, Angelica, do you want to share the last one?
Yes, and we also have an art card that is downloadable, and it can be printed and shared in your classrooms. It is from Tewa Tales of Suspense with the Barbenheimer design that Jason Garcia just shared in his presentation, and it goes through the lens of satire. So it has questions that prompt different responses to the artwork that these students can engage with. The art card is intended for a high school audience, and there is a little short lesson prompt that encourages you and your students to create a comic strip that focuses on satire. It is geared towards painting in the lesson description, but it can be adjusted to different materials and to different subjects. But this is downloadable, and it can be shared on different size papers in your classroom.
All right, great. And the last thing that we're going to do is our raffle for the Shaped by Her Hand book, again, written by Barbara Gonzalez, which is the granddaughter of Maria and Julian, as well as the Maria and Modernism catalog published by the Heard Museum. All right. Go ahead and stop sharing for a moment as it's being pulled up.
Are we seeing the wheel?
Yes.
Okay, so wonderful. We'll pick 8 winners. If you are in the Phoenix area and can come pick up your books, wonderful. If not, we will ship them to you. Our team will follow up with you over email to schedule pickup or get information to ship these to you. And we will be choosing 8 winners. So here we go. Suspense. Okay. So Estrella Vasquez. Heather Glenn. Tori Pagana. John Tuthill. Okay, 4 more, I think. Allison, correct me if I'm wrong on my accounting there, but
You're right.
okay. Myrna Rivera. Cynthia Lanjaris. All right, 2 more, I think. Carolyn Lynn. And last, and Joanne Kerrigan. So if we have just shared your name, we will be following up with you for information so that we can share both of those book resources with you. And we're going to go ahead and close out. Oh, yeah, the origin of the raffle wheel. Okay. Oh, neat. We've got a lot of cool stuff in the chat. Yeah, we can share that link. Just it's a nice visual way of showing that it truly is a random generation. Nicholas, we can share that in the follow-up. Allison, if you want to share again, just to wrap up. And again, we just want to share our gratitude with everyone for spending the time and hope we can see you at the Heard Museum sometime in the near future, if possible. Oh, and I think Jason wants to maybe share one more thing, so I'll be quiet now.
Go ahead, Jason.
Okay, I had in the chat, I had also said, can I add a raffle item? So I have a risograph print. Riso is almost like it's similar to like a Xerox copy print, but it's using colored drums. So I have an image of a corn maiden. The title is called Back in Time. And it kind of references time machine travel and Back to the Future, popular culture. But, I have a print available. And if I could add that to the raffle as we
That's
close
amazing.
out, then I can also share. I'll get with the staff, and then we can send it out all that afterwards. So
Okay, so should I run the wheel one more time, or are you saying?
Yeah. If you don't mind,
Let me go ahead
running the
and
wheel one more time for the last.
Cool. Oh, now we're really
Awesome,
getting
thank
into
you.
this.
And these
Okay,
are
all right.
those things
Share
I
my
always
screen
like
one
to
more
do, so.
time. We'll see what
Okay.
happens. Okay. Okay, Kay Martinez, congratulations. We'll get that poster to you as well. So if you were part of our raffle winners, we'll follow up with you soon. And yeah, thank you again, Allison. I'll pass it back over to you. And thank you, Jason, so much for that generosity to share that. That's so exciting.
Yeah, thank you as well. That's one of those things that's always good too. So okay, thank you very much, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. We're so excited that you were able to stay with us tonight and hear from both Diana and Jason on their wonderful presentations and their insights. We are so grateful for them as guests. And we do hope that you are able to either visit the Maria Martinez exhibit. If not, we really do hope that you will be able to use those resources that we've created for you in your classroom. One thing I wanted to quickly mention is that we do have professional development certificates that will be followed up with in an email. We'll get that to you next week. That way we're able to create individual certificates for each of you. But there will be a follow-up email after the presentation, just kind of briefly, thanking you guys, kind of briefly going over, what we talked about, as well as the downloads for the downloads that we have for you tonight as well. So I just want to say a big thank you to everyone. We really appreciate you being here, and we hope to see you again at the next Educator Nights coming up in the next school year, and also this summer in June. So thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your evening.